So I will call the meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. Morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. All right. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes. We have two sets. We have the approval of the February 12th, 2025 meeting minutes, which were sent out. And anyone have any comments on those?
Nope.
If none, I would ask for a motion of approval of the meeting minutes for February 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, great. All in favor, Al,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Jesse.
Aye.
Excellent. All right. And then we have the executive session meeting minutes from the 12th as well. Any comments? If none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Well, it's move and retain, right? I mean,
Move and retain. Yes,
move and
correct.
retain. I'll second that.
Okay, great. All right. All in favor, Al,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
and Jesse.
Aye.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, guys. I will get the February 12th ones into town clerk, and I'll retain the executive session ones. First order of business is just discussion of the pending CPC application, and there is a CPC meeting tonight. I will be able to attend. I will be there. And unfortunately, I did miss last one due to a last minute work conflict. Ellen, you were there.
Yep.
Maybe best bet, maybe Ellen, do you want to give some background for the committee just in terms of what their thoughts and comments were, and then we can go from there?
Sure. So the CPC definitely expressed appreciation for the additional detail that was sent over in the mission statement. And I think that kind of helped some members see what the trust is hoping to do. But I will say a few others still had some questions on kind of the specific uses that are envisioned for the funds. So it's a conversation that's kind of been going on the committee for a little bit. And I know, the mission statement kind of helped move towards seeing that vision, but I think it is hard with kind of the breadth of what the trust is able to do to kind of communicate at this point kind of what these funds in particular would go toward. So, I shared with them the process that went into the mission statement, that we are aware that the housing production plan is coming up, so that we are kind of continuing to think about what the goals and kind of strategies of the trust will be. So, as Doug said, there's another meeting tonight that will need to decide this. I know we're coming up on town meeting warrant closing. So I think there is some movement, but I think some are still a little hesitant without more details that we may or may not be able to provide at this point.
Yeah, Ellen, that's a good question. Just to follow up, I mean, are they looking for so specific details? It's almost like project specific, which again kind of defeats the purpose, for the use of the funds, right? I'm just curious, they literally want to know, well, we're going to use it on property X or something like that, or they're just looking for some more shape around it? I'm just curious. I know hard to probably say, but
I think more shape would be helpful. I know, they know we've had executive session meetings so that we're discussing things. So I know whatever details we're able to provide, I think would really be helpful of just kind of what we're focusing on in the short term, understanding that the specifics need to be kept in executive session for now. But yeah, any details I think we can provide would help the group.
Do you think a scenario would do, like, a property becomes available, we're interested in it, we need to move quickly, sort of thing?
Yeah, and I think kind of underscoring the due diligence that goes into that. I think there was some concern that there have been properties discussed in the past that people in the community have some concerns about with issues on those properties. And so wondering if that's the property that we're discussing in executive session. So I don't know the level of detail that we're able to provide. But I think, Paul, that type of scenario would be helpful, and giving the reassurance that even though the funds after being transferred don't go back before town meeting, that the trust takes very seriously the concerns that people voice and the responsibility to use this money responsibly.
I think you might reasonably say to the committee that, well, in fact, it's a matter of public record now that we tried to buy a property on Porterville Road. I'm sorry, not on Porterville Road, on Southfield Road. And, we were outbid on that property, and that would have been, if we had bought that property, we would have buying that property would have been a major improvement to that neighborhood, given that, the building was falling down. We have we had at least some discussions about buying a property or acquiring a property on what's the name? I'm drawing a blank on the name of the road.
Northborough Road?
Pardon?
Northborough Road?
Not Northborough Road. Atwood. Excuse me. And to acquire that property would require a vote of town meeting, because that is currently being held by the town. At present, we're not focused at all on that property. So, we have, as opportunities come available, we have been looking at single family homes typically, and with the intent of buying and probably renovating and then either renting or reselling on an affordable basis. So that's, I think you can say that without entering into any of the discussions about what we've been doing specifically. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And, so that would be an example of, what the committee is currently doing, because quite frankly, the things that come up to us that are within our wheelhouse are the purchase of existing properties, or conceivably the purchase of, a lot that was available for a single family home. That's, even with the additional funds, that's really what's in our financial wheelhouse, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know the Atwood property was a subject of some concern. And so I think that since
Yeah.
that is currently town owned, if the trust was to pursue that, that would come before town meeting.
Yes.
Is helpful too.
And right now the town is looking at a rather large bill to clean up at least a portion of it, so, that's not on the table at the moment, because we've got to resolve the lead contamination.
Yeah, so I think definitely to put it simplistically, acquisition of existing single family home properties, right? We can definitely go into detail. I think it's a great example. And obviously referencing the couple options that were put on the table. Chapter 61A land too, as well. Again, that comes up and that also moves quickly. That's the Northborough Road example. And again, if we don't have access to the funds, it effectively means that we don't have any shot at acquiring these projects, because can't wait for town meeting. So, but I can definitely, Ellen obviously will be there, but obviously I can definitely go through that in detail. And I'll also just reference the due diligence. We approach these like anyone else purchasing a home, right? So, home inspection, title inspections, again, it would be, pretty diligent, at the end of the day. So, because we definitely don't want to be acquiring stuff that have, environmental issues or title related issues or something. The goal is to, get affordable homes, increase the inventory, so that, we're staying pace with our affordable housing inventory.
Hey, Ellen, when is the next CPC meeting?
It's
It's
tonight.
tonight. Yeah.
What time is that at?
6:30.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind the eight ball and just swamped with work. What time, do we have an agenda posted for this
Yep.
committee for it?
Yeah, we posted an agenda too.
Is that gonna be on Zoom? Ellen?
Yes. Yeah, and at public safety.
Oh, it's hybrid?
Yep.
Okay.
So my plan is to be in person, but definitely everyone is more than welcome to join, whether in person or virtually.
I likely be on Zoom. Need to be at home.
Yeah, same with me.
Or at public safety building. All right. Just typically, like Ellen, where would this be on the agenda? Is this like at the front of it or?
Yeah, so I'll take a look. So I know there's this application and one other application that are still up for conversation and need to be voted on. So this will be at the top of the agenda. I don't know if it's going to come before or after. Oh, let me take a look right now and see if it's before or after the cemetery.
Yeah, Doug, thanks for posting the agenda for that. 'Cause-
And then I'm just looking
this
at the
is
mission
actually
statement.
kind of
Go ahead.
normal to me
Go
that the CPC would push back on this. Like I actually started in town government like 12, 13 years ago on CPC, and the level of diligence that committee has always exercised is like extreme. And I see that as actually a positive because the Community Protection Act is a really good thing, but the rules are pretty strict in the state, and the guidelines are. So,
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of and Jess, just being on shop seat, but fundamental issue in that, if for us to do anything of substance, right, or quickly, we got to have access to the funds, right? And if we don't, effectively, it's really hard for us to, execute our mission. There's a series of towns that actually the funds just automatically pass through CPC, right, to the Affordable Housing Trust, right? And again, we're not suggesting that here. This is a one-time transfer, but I don't disagree with you either. I mean, but it does really challenge our ability to do any of the mission statement, except for something that's very long-term, which obviously acquisition would not fall under that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I wonder.
Just a quick point. I mean, without the ability to access those funds, I don't know how they'd ever get used.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder. We don't know. At least I don't know, unless you guys have already looked into this with another town's affordable housing trust, whether like how that actually nuts and bolts works. I don't think. I would be surprised, based on my experience, that if the funds just flow through and the Affordable Housing Trust just does whatever they want with it. That's not possible because this Community Preservation Act does have strict guidelines on what the stuff can be used for. So I would think that what would happen is it would flow through, but there would be constraints on those dollars.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yes.
And maybe a path forward could be for us to, work with the CP, like have the CPC push the money through, but then as we deploy it, get on an agenda and keep them updated with the specifics. And again, I don't know if that's how other towns do it, but it would make sense to me. Ellen, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense because, like you said, there are different requirements and restrictions on what the CPA housing funds can be used for versus what the trust can spend money on. And so I think those types of situations are set up kind of once a trust gets its feet under it and kind of gets going for a little bit and can establish that relationship with the CPC. So I think kind of going forward, having that ongoing communication would be really helpful and could potentially lead to that sort of setup. The money.
So, like, how quickly typically do you guys like like, I guess I'm looking for how nimble CPC is these days, because to Paul and Doug's point, you know, if the CPC like didn't meet for 60 days, that would not work. So
Yeah.
No, I would suggest that we might propose a quarterly briefing. I don't think we want to surrender our authority.
well, but Al, that's the whole point. It's like we do have to follow the
Oh, but
CPC's rules on that. So we
absolutely.
don't have authority really
Well,
to spend the money. We're trying to work with them cooperatively.
yes, so yeah, we have to meet both the Affordable Housing Trust rules and the CPA rules, and the intersection of those two things that defines, you know, what we're permitted to do. But
Well, I guess to jump in, I mean, the fundamental issue is CPC doesn't actually have the funds either, right? I mean, CPC
Right.
needs to go to town meeting, right? So the answer is the Affordable Housing Trust is basically locked into doing business once a year based upon town meeting, right? I mean, even though we go through CPC, right? So, you know, that just effectively means that, you know, as Paula said, the money won't be spent, right? You know, or very rarely, because we won't be able to, at least on acquisitions, be able to do anything. And so that, I think that's the kind of issue. But I guess, Alan, I have a question. Of the other, I mean, was this all about really the Atwood property, or was there other parts that we put into the mission that there was more heartburn on? Because I mean, the flip side is, you know, we put 6 or 7 items, right, trying to frame how we would use the funds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the flip side, if there was 1 or 2 that were more troubling, obviously we could, you know, take those off, right? Because obviously, whatever, if this gets approved by town meeting, you know, with certain language, it'll be more specifically controlled than our broader, you know, mission, you know, or powers. But I'm just curious, was there anything else that was the subject of discussion, or was it really more about not knowing, you know, just the loss of control? I'm just curious what else was the hot button?
I would say it was the Atwood property and the general not knowing. I don't think there was anything else on the mission statement that stood out. I think there was potentially concern about buy downs of additional affordable rentals and new properties that, you know, is the money then going to the developer? I think just kind of how that is framed. I think we could maybe, if that concern comes up tonight, spend a little more time explaining what we see as the benefit of that type of setup. So I would say that and Atwood are what stood out as kind of areas of concern, but I think the mission statement that we laid out, I think aligns with what people were thinking.
I'm just looking at the mission statement. I know we've talked about buy downs to create affordable units. I don't know if that was specifically stated in the mission statement, but we have definitely talked about that publicly. I mean, that could be also the other thing too. So go ahead.
yeah, the reality of a buy down is you have to buy it from the person that owns it. And, you know, whether that's a developer or a landlord, you know, that's the reality. You've got to do business with the people who actually own the property. You can't, you know, I can't give Alan money to and then expect a third party to give us an affordable unit.
No, and so
Yeah.
that makes sense. And so I think we
Yeah.
can, you know, if that question comes up, just explain, you know, I think they understand the mechanics of that, but understand the thought process of, you know, we can only work with what's available in town. And if that's where, you know, the new housing is coming in and that's where the opportunity lies, then it's important for us to at least look into that as an option. And just quickly, Jesse, it is the first thing on the agenda tonight.
Oh, thanks, Owen.
Yep.
Yeah, so
think,
I'm definitely not opposed to doing a quarterly update. I do agree with Al that, you know, it can't, I mean, if CPC now is also approving whatever we're doing, that's kind of giving up, you know, power. I mean, I think more limiting this is probably the way to hopefully get more people comfortable. Obviously, this is obviously eventually a town meeting decision. We obviously would like a positive recommendation.
I actually did, in fact, at one point, ask town council whether, expenditures be above a certain point should be approved by the select board. And the town council nixed that. So, I think having another board approve, if they're not gonna, if town council nixed, an elected board approving an expenditure, I think it would be difficult to justify an appointed board doing that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say we
I'm
need
not-
to, yeah, I don't think we need to look for approval, but I think bringing more people on board as collaborators is valuable, right? Because there's the housing bucket money at CPC, but then there's all the other money at CPC as well. And so I think to set up a good relationship with the committee going forward, could make, larger projects that need some of the money outside of the housing bucket, and just to bring more people who are interested in these same issues on board, I think is helpful.
So I don't think, I'm not suggesting that we quote unquote surrender our authority. I guess what I'm saying is the communication really needs to be at the front end of a spend. If we go in tonight and say, hey, we'll give you guys quarterly updates, what we're basically saying is, hey, we'll keep you posted on what we're doing with the money you disperse to us. That won't fly with these guys. We need to be more proactive in terms of the communication and say, okay, thank you for working with us. We accept the transfer, and what we'll do is appear on your agenda. If do with every possible effort, but prior to execution or something like that.
Because up a little, because what are we really asking here? I mean, isn't it a once a year thing where the CPC, well, the town meeting approves CCC funding for whatever? So isn't it really a once a year transfer of money that we're looking at? So
right, but in order to get the
let
CPC
me
to agree
finish,
to do
let
it,
me finish. So we don't want to go through that every year, I don't think. I mean, don't we want to just have an agreement that this money passes through, like Doug was saying, other towns do, where it's just more or less automatic? So we just have to convince them that's a good idea. And so that just happens from here on. And, and I have no problem with updating them from time to time on what we're up to, so they feel good about it. But I don't think we want to go through this exercise every single year, do we?
Well, I
Well, I
think,
think the way we get to that is by forging a good relationship. And so I think, as a brand new trust, I think it would be pretty rare to have that automatic flow from CPC. And so, I think we don't need to eat our power. We don't need to overcomplicate this, but I think, starting off on the right foot, I think, can then get us to a place where there is that transfer.
But isn't that the ultimate goal though, that every year the money passes through?
Yeah, I mean, it always has to go to town meeting, of course, but
Right.
But then, without the full application process and all of that.
and Al, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just a one-time transfer we're asking for at this stage, right?
yeah, we have asked that they transfer the available balance that's in the community housing bucket, which is in excess of $500,000. Because, for at least 10 years, we just haven't done anything.
But I was just, I don't have an issue giving an update, when there's an update of substance on a consistent basis, right? Sometimes it might be simply just a written thing, which is, no substantive update, right? But, just to your point, I mean, again, we're in executive session a lot on real estate transactions, right? So obviously the CPC can go to an executive session, but, again, I don't, whether it's, that might, depends on how often they meet and how often we meet. So, I don't think quarterly was meant to be in the background, but, so anyways, that's just my thought.
Yeah. I think giving them a briefing when there is a substantive transaction that can be discussed publicly. And by the way, you know, even if we decide to buy a property, you know, we can make a deal, but then it has to actually be posted for 30 days. You know, so there's actually, you know, it takes 60 to 90 days to actually complete the transaction. You have to actually it's, you know, it's government acquisition rules. So it has to be posted on I've forgotten the exact term, but there's, you know, a website that says, you know, if somebody can offer us a better deal on something comparable, they get a chance to do so. And so there's a minimum of a 30 days where, you know, it has to be in the public, and then, you know, there's a period after that to actually, you know, cross the T's, dot the I's, sign the documents, and transfer the money.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share updates with them as well. CPC typically meets once a month, and you know, there's always an opportunity for the members who are representing other committees to share their updates of what historical is working on, what rec is working on. And so, you know, I can, what we discuss at our meetings, that's public knowledge, I can share with CPC as well.
Ellen, I think that's a great point. I mean, you're going to be there every time. So, and then if we have something that's more of substance, more of us can be there, you know, be a bit more formal, but I think that's a great comment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that too, you know, just updating them, like I said, from time to time, but but the fact is, excuse me, that it's kind of too late usually by the time we, you know, we have a line on something. We can't be like saying, oh, well, you know, this is what we want to spend the money on, because it depends, you know, if a town meeting happens to be coming up, then okay, great, but even then, I mean, you know, I've been through the CPC process, and it's a long time, you know, you gotta file an application, it has to be vetted by them, and that's fine, but it takes a long time.
Yeah.
It
The
doesn't
min-
work, the kind of thing we're talking about.
The minimum time frame for a CPA application is, I believe, 7 months, which is, you know, the applications, this is the CPA's rules, have to be in by the end of August for a town meeting, which will happen in April. You know, it can extend as long as 22 months, depending on when the funds are actually available. So it's not set up to engage in real estate transactions.
Exactly, yeah.
I think also the other thing too, maybe we should just let the community know. I mean, again, you know, 400,000 likely is going to create a single affordable unit, right? It's unlikely to, yeah. So it's really not something that's going to suddenly create 50 affordable units. Even if we were teamed up with an affordable house, it's just not a lot of funds, right? And again, the goal here is for us to try to, you know, add a couple of affordable units, particularly existing single family home units, so that we can keep our inventory, at least for background growth, right? This is obviously not going to change the needle of being, you know, suddenly above 10% or below 10%. But again, we're going to have background growth in the town. So adding a couple of units every couple of years is going to be really helpful to keep us above that 10% limit once we hit it.
Yeah. Well, in fact, Jesse and I spent some time with Karina figuring out whether we had actually made it to safe harbor. And, you know, we got educated. And we are, in fact, in safe harbor now, based on the 120 Turnpike 40B. Correct. Chime in here if I get this wrong, Jesse.
No, you're good.
And we are in 40B until for 2 years, which would end December 17th, 27. 27.
Well, that's the part I'm
provided
provided
that a building permit is applied for the 120 40B by December 17th, 2025. We are apparently 1 unit shy of meeting our 10% goal, which would give us a longer stretch in safe harbor. And so, you know, the unit we're talking about, if we can get there, then we'll talk about that more in executive session.
So the I think housing production plan is on this agenda, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
like that's part of the plan as well, as far as remaining in safe harbor. So I do think that that's a pertinent action item for this committee to do the housing production plan.
So we can obviously add that to the mission statement too, because that will cost us some money. It's not currently in the mission statement. Could be a simple addition to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Karina made it pretty clear that this was a Shopsy, thing, and now it's us. So if we don't do it, nobody will. Basically, that's where that's at.
Yeah, and well, we should shift to the housing production plan. But any other topics on this? I think we've discussed it pretty well. I think I'll definitely, with others who attend tonight, be able to provide some more specific details. Maybe get into the weeds a little bit on some of the bullet points, because again, if for some reason like the down payment assistance or the rental assistance is also a hot button, maybe that's something that just comes off. I mean, I think the real estate transactions is the main priority for us, and obviously we can talk about that. I mean, we can definitely provide updates. Ellen's on the board and she can provide updates at every meeting, and then anything more of substance, more of us will attend and, brief them on what we're using the funds actually for. And then I think we can go from there, but that seems like the game plan for tonight, if everyone agrees. Okay. Great. Next item, housing production plan. Is the next item, but I will open up, I think Jesse or Al, I think you guys have each maybe some updates on that, and we can talk about that further.
So Jesse and I met with Karina to just understand where we were in terms of safe harbor. And, we have to create a housing production plan by late June of this year, an updated plan. Karina said she would forward us a draft, the prior RFP and the list of some companies that or some consultants that could help do that. I don't know what it costs, but I would suggest that perhaps one or two of us sort of take the action item to go and work this out and then present it to a draft RFP to the committee at our next meeting. I think we do need to move with some speed on this.
And Al, quick question, because obviously it is quick, right? July 2025 expiration. Do you know if the state has given extensions? Again, obviously we're a newly formed board.
I don't. That might be something, Ellen. Ellen, is this an area of your expertise?
It's not. I'm happy to look into that specific question and to work on this in general, though.
Yeah, because it could be good. I mean, I think we should move with all due haste, right? So if we get the RFP, and I'm happy to help as well too. Also defer to others if they prefer to take a bigger role in it too with Ellen. But it might be a good thing while we're getting the RFP out to see, do we really do have this hard stop, or, given that we're already in process, ask for a short-term extension? Because, I mean, I remember reading the housing production plan when I first joined Shopsy. It was not a short plan. And I think, a lot of the topics on it, are going to be topics we want to discuss. Paul's even brought up again, for an agenda item in the future, like bonding, what other options do we have, as part of our funding sources and stuff. So, I mean, we could do it quick, at least to make sure we don't want to lose compliance, but we may want a little more time just to make sure that we have a bit more depth, on it. But yeah, Ellen, if you could check into that, it'd be great.
Yep, I'll do that.
Ellen, why don't you and I connect offline on this also? Because I think I can help with,
Great.
A little bit of groundwork on that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
So this is a state requirement, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I have the old one. I mean, some of you may have it. I'll dig up the old one and circulate it to everyone.
Oh, that would be good.
People already have it. I don't know, Jesse, if you have it already, but
I have it somewhere, but I
yeah.
can do that too. I'll dig it up.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
I know I've seen it, but I mean, I guess we have to do an RFP for this if it costs more than $5,000, is that right? So,
we
Yeah.
do.
but if we're doing an update to an existing plan, I would think it's cheaper, but maybe I'm wrong. But
Guys, I have to go, unfortunately. Sorry to jump off early, unless we're going to adjourn now or get other stuff.
We got to spend a few minutes in executive session, I think.
Okay. Will you guys have a quorum if I jump?
Yep. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have 4 still.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Thanks, guys.
You got to do
Thanks,
that work
Jesse.
thing. It gets in the way of your town affairs.
Oh, I think he froze.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, all right. So moving on to the next item, on the open agenda is, Al, you asked me to put the address on 12 Blueberry Lane, so I'll turn it over to you for discussion of that.
Yeah, I stumbled across this. This is, a unit in a 55 plus community, and I guess the question is not really specific to that, although we might want to consider is this the sort of thing we would be interested in acquiring? The thing I will note is it does have a $450 HOA fee, which is a monthly fee, and I don't know whether that kind of prices that out of sort of the affordability or not.
Ellen, do you know, again, I have a contact that does affordable condominium ownership in Boston, and they just opened up a 40 unit community. I can ask them, but I'm curious, Ellen, do you know if, I know that there's got to be some common area fees. I just don't know how that, how that gets charged or how that works. But I can find out. But Ellen, any thoughts?
I don't know in this type of situation. Yeah, so if you have someone who could answer that, that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out on that topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these units come up for sale on a semi-regular basis, and whether, that would be something we might be interested in exploring further.
So Al, I can tell you that the city of Boston has a program that does this type of thing, right? So in other words, they acquire existing units, right? That are they're definitely not the highest end units, right? But they're solid product, and and then they turn them either into home ownership or rental. And so they may end up spending like $100,000 to preserve it as a permanently affordable unit. But it's not the full value, because obviously the affordable, the rents still cover some type of, loan on it. Or if it's bought, the homeowner is actually still buying it, but it's not a bad strategy. It's more just a question of value, right? How much do you have to put into it? But I think the idea of having diversity in the affordability too, so that some of them are for 55 plus, as opposed to just, family housing. I mean, affordability is needed at all ends of the spectrum, as we know. So, I mean, I think it'd be in the target, right? I think it's the idea of how can we, pick up a couple units, that we can keep permanent for a long time.
and,
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
to me, it might be part of a larger discussion. Doug mentioned, I sent him a note asking about bonding capacity, which is something I just don't know much about. So I was hoping we could put that on a future agenda is, how does all that work? And if we can spend, this unit was what, 500,000 or so. I mean, we could buy one unit with that, or if we use that for bonding capacity, can we get a lot more? And, build something. I guess I'm still intrigued by that Northborough Road property, or something like it, where we could build a development that would be all affordable. To me, that's sort of the nirvana, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's a question
Yeah.
of, how best do we want to spend what money we have?
Right. Yeah, I very much agree with you on that, Paul. And kind of that vision would be wonderful to achieve. And I was a little torn on this because I think some of what value we can bring to purchasing single family properties is like preserving them from demolition and rebuilt as multi-million dollar properties. And so in this type of situation where it's a condo, it's in this type of development, it's going to be preserved as a smaller 55 plus unit, whether we're involved or not. And so for the expenditure of funds, it would require, we could then potentially rent it, to someone at a lower income. So there's definitely a benefit to that, but the preservation piece isn't there, which I think is some of what I'm looking for in some of the single family projects that we look at.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good comment. I mean, again, I think one of the things, it's actually good to do the math exercise too, right? To see what the options are. I mean, I think it's actually good that we talk, because again, like you just said, like, I mean, definitely a key goal is if we're one unit short, right, to really lock up safe harbor, we should definitely be getting a unit, right? But we could become more selective after that too, as well, thinking about what is out there. And I'll just agree with you. Like, and again, I think the older homes and the smaller homes are going to be a better target because they won't be as expensive, right? And I think the idea is how do we use these funds most effectively? But I think to Paul's point, we definitely, and I don't know, despite probably, and I'm curious of who you think we should talk to in the town, but it could be a good discussion with the town, someone in the town that can help us understand, bonding capacity, how it works, how could it work in these situations? Because again, real estate, they're all still generating, whether it's affordable housing fees, or they're selling. And so, it's not like, it could be a good use for us to figure out that maybe we can actually support a loan on an affordable home so that we can recycle the capital back into the affordable housing trust. And then it's being that loan is being maintained by the affordable rent. They won't be big loans, but still it's a good use, efficient use of capital.
I can certainly, I'd be happy to arrange for Brian Ballantyne, who's our treasurer, and bonding, it's an interesting thing, is his exclusive domain. Even the select board can't tell him what to do when it comes to bonding. It's state law. I am actually working with him on a 15-year debt forecast right now, so that's an area I have some modest knowledge of. But yeah, I think I'd be happy to bring Brian in just to give you an idea. Because we've done this with other things when we purchased land, for example, Chestnut Hill. The way bonding works is the bond is a general obligation of the town of Southborough. It is not, I don't know whether this body can we do have the power, I believe, to borrow money, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a general obligation of the town of Southborough. And then what has happened in the Chestnut Hill acquisition is that basically the CPA funds every year are essentially there's a warrant article to pay for that bond with CPA funds. So it would work similar to that. So what the long-term borrowing capacity would be effectively determined by the annual amount that the CPA could transfer to this body and then used to be paid on a bond. So that's on the order of $50,000 a year, and I'd have to go noodle the numbers to tell you how much we could actually borrow based on 50,000, but it's a fairly straightforward calculation. But I'd be happy to arrange for Brian to come in and talk to us in more detail. He's the expert in town.
I think another opportunity too is that when we get the consultant on for the housing production plan, the consultant may actually have some experience, right? So,
yeah.
And as I say this, doesn't necessarily need to be a bond necessarily. Be curious too, because again, I do know, affordable housing groups, obviously don't bond, they just borrow, right?
Right.
So, I mean, but this is a great topic for the housing production plan too, to understand what are the tools out there, for us. It may not end up in the housing production plan, but I think having the consultant on, should definitely give us some room to explore with their expertise of, what are the tools out there for this committee.
Good idea.
Um, Okay, I think that covers that one. There are a couple attendees. I'm going to pause to see if they want to provide any comments or raise their hands. I think Freddie and Kristen are in there. Because if not, I think we're going to move to executive session. Just give them a minute to see. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so I think that's the end of our regular meeting. So I'll need a motion to move into executive session per MGL exemption number 6 to discuss a potential property acquisition. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor, Al,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Ellen.
Aye.
All right, I'm going to figure out how to do this. Okay. Thank you, Freddie and Kristen, for attending. Okay, now I got a lock. Hold on. Did this last time. Let's see how good I'm at this. How did I lock it last time? Oh, here we go. Okay, lock webinar. All right, I have locked. I only have 4 of us on. And I think last time we did not record, so I'm going to stop video if everyone agrees with that too as well. All right, so the video, well, that's not the recording. I just turned myself off. No laughing at me as I do this, guys.